Okay, hello. This video is going to be about biology. And I want to start off by saying that biology is the study of life. So let's write that down. Biology is the study of life. And if something is alive, then we call that an organism. So that's another vocabulary word we're going to write down. Organism is a living thing. Okay, and there's a huge range in what is alive, and we have a huge range of organisms on this planet, and they range from anything from a one-celled organism that is made up of just one cell, like a bacteria, all the way to something that's really weird, like a fungus or a mushroom, or plants are really interesting and cool, and of course, animals like an elephant is made up of billions of cells, and we're made up of billions of cells too, and we're alive also. And so, if something is alive, then it is going to have certain characteristics. And in this class, we have put living organisms as something that has one of 7 different characteristics. And so what we're going to do now is I am going to make a list of those 7 different characteristics. So 7 characteristics for living organisms. And so based on these, you can look at something and you can decide, does it have these 7 qualities? If it does, then you can say it's alive. If it doesn't, then you can say it's probably not alive. And so there are some things that we're going to go over to see, like, are they living or are they not living? Okay, but first let's go over the list. So the first thing that I'm going to point out is there needs to be some order to the body of the organism. Okay, so there needs to be some order. And so this, at the smallest level of any kind of organization of a body, there's going to be cells. So all living organisms are made up of what we call cells, and we are going to go over that in this class in a later video. So living things are made of cells. And like I mentioned before, some things are made of just one cell. And so within the one cell, there's going to be some organization. And so it's not random. It's not just a bunch of random atoms that are just floating around and just like in a mush. There actually is some order to it. And if there is an organism that is made up of lots of cells, then there's also an organization on that. Okay, so you have cells at the smallest level of a living organism, and then you can build up to what we call tissue. So if you have a lot of the same kind of cells, like for example, you have a lot of heart cells all together, that's called heart tissue. And then if you have a lot of different tissues, that's called an organ. And then you can have lots of different organs, that's called an organ system. And then if you have lots of organ systems, you have what's called an organism. Okay? And an organism is like just the living thing. Okay, so that's the first of the 7. The second thing is going to be using energy. So it uses energy, uses energy, yep, or processes energy. And so all living things have to get energy, or like a fuel, because every cell is going to be doing some cellular processes, which is what we call metabolism. And all metabolism processes need energy to do it. So you need energy to live. And so all this energy comes from the food that we eat. And then the food itself, which is usually the plants, usually get the energy from the sun. So the energy on the planet comes from the sun, gets incorporated into our food, then we eat the food, and now we can use that energy to do what we need to do, which is live our lives. And so I'm going to say that all energy comes from the sun. sun and gets into our food. Okay, so moving on. The next characteristic that all living things have is that they can all reproduce. Okay, and this is very important. So even at the cellular level, all cells need to be able to replicate. Okay, and so that's what keeps everything, going on and on and on for generations after generations for the last millions of years. And so what this means is that if you are a living organism or a living cell, you can replicate yourself into another organism of the same type. So replication of the same type. Okay, and what that means is that like a certain species can only replicate into the same species. Okay, you can't replicate into a new species or a different species. Okay, number 4. Number 4 is, what's another one? I'm trying to remember. What is it? Let's see. Okay. All living organisms live in certain environments, and organisms need to respond to their surroundings. And so they need to respond to their environment. And so what that means is that an organism can't just sit there and not ever respond in any way. Even though like plants and trees look like they're just stuck, which they kind of are because their roots are like in a certain spot, they do respond to their environment, okay? And so what this means is that they are going to respond positively to things that are helpful, like food or mating, and they're going to respond negatively or like, run from anything that is going to cause it harm, like a predator. Okay, so it will move towards positive stimuli and away from negative stimuli. Okay, and this is very important for the survival of any organism. Okay, so another one is that all living things have to be able to develop and grow. Okay? And so what this means is that all living organisms have what we call DNA. And DNA are some instructions on what that organism is going to grow into and what it's going to look like and how it's going to act and like what kind of things it's going to do. So based on the DNA of that organism, it's going to develop and grow into whatever it's going to be, okay? And when that organism is born, it has a certain set of genes in that DNA, and it can't change those genes. Like, that's the genes it got. But according to those genes, it's going to develop and grow in a certain, very specific way. So based on the DNA, okay, and I'm going to put in parentheses genes, an organism will develop and grow in a very specific way. Okay, and I want to point out that, when you're born, you're like really small, little cute baby, and you grow into this, huge adult. And you have to eat food to get that matter. Okay, so in the food, you get stuff that you can break down to make energy to live, like we said in number 2, but also you're getting atoms that you can incorporate into your body to make your body bigger. Okay, So the next one is that all living things have to maintain some or regulate. They have to regulate their bodies. Okay, so that is called homeostasis, which means that all living things have to be within a certain range of all these various factors. For example, all organisms have like an optimal temperature range, and so they can't, there's like a low end of that range and a high end of the range, and the body has to stay within that, otherwise the body starts to break down. And so this goes for a lot of different things, like some organisms need a certain amount of light, like plants, for example. And some organisms, like we regulate our sugar in our blood, and we regulate our pH, and it's different based on different parts of our body. Like, for example, the pH in your stomach has a very low range, where the pH in your blood has a very neutral range. So the sixth factor for all living things is that we have to maintain what we call homeostasis. And so what that means is that certain factors have to stay within a range. Okay. And then the last thing is that all organisms, are living within a population, okay? And so there's a population of the same species, and that species needs to be able to adapt to the changing environment, because since Earth started, the environment always changes no matter what. And the environment is going to change, and that population of that species needs to adapt to that change. And so what that means is that you have to have these different traits within the population, and some of those traits are going to have an advantage over other traits. And so what this is called evolution. So all populations need to evolve, need to be able to evolve. Okay, so the ability to adapt through evolution. Okay, and this is very important for any species to survive, because, like I said, environments are always changing, and so the population is going to need to adapt to the new environment. Okay, so that's it for today's video. Stay tuned for the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.